Now, some of the things that I went through in that transformation was I was very much in my head. I was logic driven, everything was procedure, this has to happen, this happens, and it's all sequential and logic. Now, in so doing, I was shutting myself off to other possibilities. And when I say other possibilities, I'm thinking of that still point, almost like in meditation, where you are just silent and you are open to receive from other realms, communication, even communication with the higher elements or aspects of yourself, your higher self. And the information that's available at that point is pretty phenomenal. And there's a lot of folk who are able to talk about that. But where I'm going is the transformation was to be able to tap into that was not a 5-minute job, nor was it something that was going to happen whilst I was logic and confronting government and banks. Now, if I look back at now where my energy was, and this is going back to like the analogies of the Matrix. The Matrix movie shows all the humans there plugged into the machine, and we're the batteries for this system. Now, in the same way, what I was finding was that even though I was, let's say, fighting for freedom and justice in the notices and documents that I was putting out to banks and governments, I was still spending a massive amount of energy in terms of pulling my hair out going, oh, I can't believe how screwed up this system is. The bewilderment I was experiencing was incredible. I was experiencing disdain, anger, this frustration at the system not changing, the frustration at not getting an answer to a simple question. And the energy that was involved in that certainly wasn't contributing to my happiness. And as I found out through working with Deb there, that energy was basically being received by the system as food. So my fighting became feeding for the system. Now we look at, say, the work from Dr. Emoto, the Japanese doctor who was taking glass jars of water from the same source and writing the label of fear on one of them and love on the other. Now, he's got 2 glasses of water like that. He'd snap freeze them with liquid nitrogen and then look at the ice crystals. Now, the ice crystals that came from the glass jar with fear written on it were completely messed up and deformed and ugly. The ice crystals or snow crystals that came from the glass jar with love written on it came out as a perfect version of a snowflake. Now, we're 70-odd% water. So what do you think the label on our forehead's really going to look like in terms of our body makeup when we've got a label on the top there that says fear or anger or frustration or jealousy or rage, any one of those things which was experienced on an almost daily basis when I was interacting with government and banks. And the snow crystal or the ice crystal or what my body looked like would have been a mess. So there was a physical manifestation of what I was looking at. And so I said, okay, well, where's the choice here? I can choose to either go bang bang head to head with this system, or I can choose to step back and go, okay, I see that, I don't support it, but I'm going to go in this direction and I'm going to start making my own life, my own reality. Now you think, okay, well, creating your own reality, that's all just bunk. It's a myth. Well, why is it that the media spends so much time creating the atmosphere of violence, hate, all of those negative energies and emotions? I suppose that it's because we are created beings and that they want our creational energies to create their reality which is a completely messed up environment. Now, what do we need to do to withdraw from creating their reality and to step into creating our reality? Well, that goes back to the transformation that I was talking about. Until I was in a space where I was connected with my heart and I was balanced between my head and my heart, and I could actually have compassion for those who are being puppeted, for those who are being conned. I mean, effectively, a lot of the people that I wrote to in banks and governments, they didn't have a clue. They were in there trying to earn a wage to pay for their mortgage, which was phony, and they were basically running on the rat race themselves. Their choice was, do I provide for my family, or do I get kicked out of my job because I stood up and asked a question? So I have compassion for those guys who are basically in that position. I do encourage them to have a look outside the box, but that's where they're at the moment and have been for how many years. So where I'm going now is with that transformation is to get the balance between what's going on in your head and your heart. There's, again, the science goes in to support the act of your heart is pumping out more electromagnetic vibrational energy than your head does. There's got to be some balance in there. The other thing that I found that wasn't balanced was the masculine and the feminine. Now, it doesn't mean I've started wearing a skirt. What it does mean is that I've started to recognize that, hang on, there's a balance here between the masculine and the feminine. I can look out into the world and see the church system has been a full-on patriarchal system. We've seen women have not had the vote. We've seen women on different salaries, all sorts of inequalities. Now, that's one representation of that patriarchal aspect and the bias towards the masculine. But what happens when we start bringing those back into balance? Have the masculine energies been corrupted as well? What are the men taught? They're not taught to have any emotion. They're not taught to cry. They're basically told to toughen up and carry on. Now, there's no balance in that. If I can bring the balance in of both sides and bring in some compassion and start seeing what's going on in my system as from an energetic standpoint as well. I mean, take for example the ability to actually feel love from another. With working with Deb, again back in Mount Shasta, I was completely blocked off to that. I found that for how many years of my life, I had been pushing out and pushing love away so that I couldn't even feel it. It was only when I started to get into how I could feel love for my own self to start with. That was the starting point. Without that, there was no way I was going to be able to feel love from anyone else. And so the transformation I went through was really stepping back into being me. And it was, in many ways, I put the rest of the world on hold for quite some time. Now, that was quite shocking for a lot of folk because they kind of went, well, where's Scott gone? What's he done? Has he been abducted by the CIA? And all sorts of fear set in all sorts of circles around me. Now, I appreciate the concern in that, and I suppose here am I coming back to share where I was, what I was doing during that time. So I am okay. And I would say I'm actually travelling down a completely different path than what I was doing before. And don't by any means take this as I support government or I've been paid off or bought or anything like that. I recognise that system has to go. However, I don't think it's going to go from fighting it head on like that. I think if all of us can start withdrawing our energies from that system, again, go back to the matrix, we're unplugging. And we say, I'm not going to participate in creating that reality. I'm going to go put my energies into building this. And that's going to be the next part of the journey as to where we go from here. So for the moment, that's going to be pretty much a wrap of the transformation that I've gone through. I'm sure there'll be updates on the nuances of my transformation. I am working closely with Deborah Pietschs, as I said before. with Up.Shift Is Happening TV.com. So head on over to that website and have a look there. So that's where we're at, and stay tuned for another update. Thanks for watching. Cheers. That was not a 5-minute job, nor was it something that was going to happen whilst I was logic and confronting government and banks. Now, if I look back at now where everything was procedure, this has to happen, this happens, and it's all sequential and logic. Now, in so doing, I was shutting myself off to other possibilities. And when I say other possibilities, I'm thinking of that still point, almost like in meditation, where you are just silent and you are open to receive from other realms, communication, even communication with the higher elements or aspects of yourself, your higher self. And the information that's available at that point is pretty phenomenal. And there's a lot of folk who are able to talk about that. But where I'm going is the transformation was to be able to tap into. Now, some of the things that I went through in that transformation was I was very much in my head. I was logic driven.